Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk about a drama thriller film called Stoker from 2013. Enjoy your viewing. India Stoker stood by the roadside, wearing her mother's blouse, her father's belt around her waist, and shoes given to her by her uncle. She looked out into the field at the flowers and reflected on growing up and freedom and on who she had been since birth. A few days before her 18th birthday, her father, Richard, died far from home. His car burned to the ground after a mysterious fall from a bridge. This year, for her birthday, India received a key in a box tied with yellow ribbon. Usually she received identical shoes of different sizes in such boxes. Until the funeral, she thought her father had sent her these gifts, but it turned out that it was his younger brother Charles, a man who was rumored to be constantly traveling the world. India only learned of his existence at his funeral. The man seemed strange to her, as if he was not upset by Richard's death, and the old housekeeper, Mrs. McGarrick, was frightened by his appearance in the house. Nevertheless, India's mother, Evelyn, allowed Charles to stay in their home for a few days. The next morning, the girl witnessed an argument between her uncle and Mrs. McGarrick. The woman reproached Charles for being his eyes and ears in the house all these years, but now she was no longer going to cover for him. That same day, Evelyn does not find the woman and suggests that her daughter go to the city with her and Charles to relax. However, India refuses. Left alone, she decides to search the guest's bag and finds a water pistol, a passport, documents for an apartment in New York, and a box tied with yellow ribbon. However, she does not have time to open it because her mother and uncle return to the house. Evelyn still can't find Mrs. McGarrick, so she asks Charles to cook dinner and India to take the ice cream to the basement and put it in the freezer. The girl does as she is asked, not realizing that there is something hidden under the frozen food. At dinner, when the subject of Richard comes up, the upset widow leaves the room. Charles pours India a vintage of 1994, the year of her birth. When his niece asks him, "What do you want from me?" he answers, "I want to be your friend." The next day, Charles drives up to the school in his luxury car, but India refuses to go with him and takes the school bus. The girl notices that her mother and uncle are getting closer and closer. After school, she finds them together. Evelyn is teaching Charles to play the piano. The next day, the man comes to play tennis, wearing Richard's belt, although he says it was a little too big for him. India's grandmother, Jean, visits them. She spends the evening watching her nephew with distrust. When Charles leaves to make tea, she tries to talk to Evelyn about their life here. However, the woman is indignant and replies that it is none of her business. Jean decides to spend the night in a hotel, and for some reason Charles asks which hotel. The woman gives India a note with her phone number and asks her to call. Getting into a taxi, she asks the driver to take her to the hotel. When she arrives, Jean discovers that her cell phone is missing. Worried, she goes to a phone booth to make a call from there. But before she can dial the number, Charles approaches her. He says that he had to call the taxi company to find out where she was and return her lost phone. After that, he takes off his brother's belt and strangles his aunt. At the same time, at the Stoker house, Evelyn, not finding her guest at home, decides to look in his bag. India, making herself a dessert, finds Mrs. McGarrick's corpse in the freezer. The next day, Charles comes to pick up his niece at school again and watches a boy from her class flirt with her in the backyard and get hit in the palm of her hand with a sharpened pencil. Another boy, with whom she is also not eager to communicate, stands up for her. When India returns home, she decides to play the piano. Unexpectedly, her uncle joins her, and it turns out that he is very good at this instrument. At night, she sees Charles talking sweetly to her mother in the kitchen, and then they start dancing and kissing. India, seeing this, runs away from home. She comes to a bar where local guys gather and meets Whip Taylor, who invites her to take a walk in the woods. There, she says that she feels a little different today and starts kissing the guy, as if imitating her uncle and mother. But then she bites Whip. The angry boy tries to forcefully get what he came for, but is stopped by Charles, who appears out of nowhere. He ties him up with belts and then offers his niece to do whatever she wants with him. They return home, and India takes a shower, where she remembers how Charles, during a fight, started strangling Whip with her father's belt until he broke his neck. They then took the body to the Stoker's garden, and while her uncle went to get a shovel, India decided to call Grandma Jean. However, she suddenly heard the familiar signal of her cell phone coming from under one of the stones. With Charles's guidance, she then buried Whip Taylor's body. After her shower, India brushes her mother's hair and says she saw her with her uncle in the kitchen. When the woman says that she didn't even notice her daughter, the girl replies that her father taught her how to do this, as they regularly went hunting together. And today, India realized that her father not only loved hunting, but organized it personally for her, saying that sometimes you have to do something bad to avoid doing something even worse. The next day, while cleaning her father's office, India suddenly remembers the key he gave her and opens a locked desk drawer. Inside, she finds a box with her father's childhood photos. In one of the pictures, she sees her three brothers: Richard, the older one, Charles, the middle one, and Jonathan, the youngest, whom she has never heard of before and who never appears in any other photo. In the same drawer, India finds another box containing letters she received from her uncle Charles, supposedly from different parts of the world. In them, he told her about his travels and dreamed of seeing her as soon as possible. However, when the girl accidentally drops one of the envelopes from her hands, she notices that all these letters were written from the Crawford Psychiatric Clinic. At first, India runs to call the police, but then she just throws away her uncle's things and asks him to leave. The only thing she wants to know is what happened to Jonathan. Charles says that as a child he was jealous of his younger brother, to whom Richard paid more attention. So when Jonathan was 2 years old, Charles dug a big hole in their sandbox and buried his brother while their older brother was away at camp. After that, he was placed in a psychiatric clinic, the building of which belonged to their family, so Charles could leave at any time. He decided to leave on India's 18th birthday, hoping to see her. However, Richard drove him to the river, gave him a car, and gave him the documents for an apartment in New York to stay away from his family. However, Charles, feeling betrayed, beat his brother to death with a rock and faked a car accident. India is shocked by this story, but her uncle says that he has been waiting for her to grow up all these years. He gives his niece high-heeled shoes and wishes her a happy birthday. The sheriff comes to the house looking for the missing whip. The girl tells him that they were walking in the woods at night. Then they parted ways, and she never saw him again. The sheriff records this testimony and notes that the Stoker family's housekeeper, Mrs. McGarrick, has also disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Charles assures India that the police will return and invites her to come with him to New York. At that moment, the girl's mother finds them and realizes everything. At night, Evelyn tells her daughter that she hates her and dreams of seeing life tear her apart. Later, during a private conversation, Charles hints that Aunt Jean wanted to tell him something important about him before she disappeared. Now she begs her leave her daughter alone, and he suggests that she go on a trip with him and let the adult India stay home alone. Charles pretends to seduce the woman, but in fact begins to strangle her with her husband's belt, calling his niece to watch. However, when India appears, she simply pulls out a hunting rifle and shoots him. The girl, as usual, buries her uncle in the garden in front of his car and drives away from home. However, on the road, she is stopped by a sheriff for speeding. To the policeman's surprise, India calmly says that she just wanted to get his attention, and then suddenly stabs the man in the neck with garden shears. The girl watches her victim crawl on the ground for a while, and then, with the excitement of a hunter, raises her gun and finishes him off. If you have watched the video so far, you should know that I am happy to have viewers like you. Thank you for watching to the end. Subscribe to the channel and follow the news. Klonsak Recapped was with you. See you soon.